Hi, everyone, and welcome to Whether or Not, sponsored by TD Bank. I'm WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg. Well, we've been heavy on the weather in Whether or Not recently, and of course for good reason. We've had a very active pattern in January, a barrage of storms, but I promised in a recent episode that once we took a little bit of a pause, which we're in right now as we go into a January thaw, we're going to talk about some more of the knot, but this knot is very, very special, and I wanted to give you a big heads up on a brilliant celestial event that will be coming up in just a short time as we get into the spring, early April to be exact. It is a total solar eclipse, a rare event, and we had an annular solar eclipse back in 2023. But this one is a total solar eclipse, and we'll explain the difference, and it's coming very close to the tri-state area, the path of totality across the United States, all the way from Mexico to Maine. And we're going to tell you how the best way is to see it, how you need to stay safe, and the best places to go. And for that, we have a wonderful source of information, a gentleman who I know that a lot of people in the tri-state area are going to be super familiar with, probably from the moment you hear his voice and certainly when you see him. We're going to talk to one of the deans of meteorology in the tri-state area weather, and also a lecturer and an instructor at the Hayden Planetarium. It's Joe Rao. Joe Rao, welcome to Whether or Not.
It's great to be here, Lee, and great to be able to expound a bit on this amazing celestial sight that you just gave an introduction to. Coming our way in the second Monday of April, April the 8th, a total solar eclipse.
Joe, before we get into that, I just want to thank you. You know, we've talked in the past, but it's great to finally connect like this. But I do want to express my appreciation, and I'm sure many people's thank yous across the tri-state area for your unique style over the years, your weather expertise, and your astronomical expertise. It's really an honor for me to talk to you today.
Well, thank you very, very much. When I was on television, I always used astronomy as a way to get people to watch, because whenever we talk about events such as, let's say, the passage of the International Space Station over our area, or perhaps an upcoming eclipse or a meteor shower, I always found that a lot of people got very turned on by those events. Mm-hmm. And speaking of getting turned on, Lee, I'm going to make a request now to everybody who's watching this podcast at this moment in time. Mm-hmm. I want all of you who are listening right now to send me your bucket list. And when I get those bucket lists, I'm going to look at it. And if on that list I do not see a total eclipse of the sun, I am going to take this Sharpie and take the list and go to at least one of those things on the bucket list and add total solar eclipse to your bucket list. You have to see, if you've never seen one before, you have to see a total solar eclipse. It is stunning. A total solar eclipse is probably the most amazing spectacle that you will ever see in your lifetime. Consider, Lee, the fact that astronomers travel, in some cases, halfway around the world to see one of these things, and yet, on that second Monday in April, April the 8th, for many people here in the tri-state area, it is just only a few hours' drive to the north, up across western and northern New York State, to see this incredible sight. And that's not going to happen too often in one's lifetime, unless you're practically in the totality zone. And for 32 million people from Texas through the Tennessee and Ohio River Valley, up across upstate New York and into New England, 32 million people already live in that zone of total eclipse. And I don't even know how many more millions of people are going to be traveling to try to get into that zone in the days leading up to totality, because it is going to be, again, an absolutely amazing sight to see.
Joe, you're no rookie to eclipses. Your first one in 1972, and made a trip even out to Montana in the late 70s. Is that correct?
I've been practically everywhere. I saw, my grandfather took me to my very first total eclipse in 1972. And the reason that he took me was because he said, "You've got to see one of these." And he recalls when he was 16 years old in 1925, seeing a total eclipse of the sun that passed over New York City. It was an amazing spectacle to him. And ironically, I was 16 years old when he loaded me and my grandmother and my mom and my sister into his beat-up Plymouth Fury, and we took a leisurely 900-mile drive up to the Gaspé Peninsula of Quebec, where we were able to see a total eclipse of the sun. And as soon as I saw that, I was hooked. And now with this upcoming April event, this will be my 14th total eclipse of the sun. And I've been, like I said, everywhere. I flew over the North Pole to see one in 2008. And my most recent adventure was to Antarctica for a total eclipse of the sun back in December of 2021.
Joe, talk about the mechanics of this, just what's going on with the moon, the sun, the earth, how everything has to be aligned.
Well, indeed, you have to get that alignment just right. And at least twice each year, the alignment is such that you get an eclipse of the sun. However, it doesn't always happen over your part of the world. These eclipses have a perverse habit, total eclipses especially, of occurring over places like, well, this world that we live on, this planet we live on, is 3/4 water. So more often than not, part of that totality path is going to pass over open waters of the ocean. But also, it seems like the totality will pass over Siberia or Antarctica or some wide open area in South America where few people live. This is going to be very unusual that this eclipse is going to happen over portions of northern Mexico and straight across the southern and eastern United States, and then exiting out over the ocean and Atlantic Canada. The folks in Canada will be able to see this eclipse. Montreal is in the path of totality, and portions of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland. So there are going to be a lot of folks who are going to be treated to this. And again, the alignment is such that you need to get the moon directly in front of the sun, but it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes the moon, and you mentioned the annular eclipse last October. The moon last October passed directly in front of the sun, but unfortunately, it was a little bit too far to cover the sun completely. It was kind of like, well, I call it the penny on nickel effect. Pretend if the nickel is the sun and the penny is the moon, no matter what you do, you're never going to cover up that nickel with the penny because the penny is going to be a little bit too small. Back in October, the moon was about 250,000 miles away from the Earth, just too far away to cover the sun completely. So when the sun and the moon were completely and properly aligned, we had a ring of sunlight surrounding the darkened moon. That was spectacular. Indeed, it was a most amazing sight, but it was still nothing to compare to what is coming our way in April, because in April, the moon is going to be a lot closer. It's going to be about 225,000 miles away from us, about 25,000 miles closer than it was in October. It will be close enough and large enough to cover the sun completely. And when that happens, when totality hits, it is just an astonishing sight, a most amazing spectacle to see.
And we'll be able to still see, of course, the changing sun's corona, correct?
That's absolutely correct, but only, again, if you're in the path of totality. Here in New York, for example, on that particular April day, April the 8th, we will be treated here in the New York tri-state area to about a 91% partial eclipse. Now, a lot of your viewers will probably say, well, hey, 91%, that's good enough for me. That's No, it's not, because even with that 9%, that slender sliver of the sun still remaining, there's going to be too much light for you to see the corona. And
do you get the diamond ring in that or no?
No, you do not. It is just, it'll be an interesting thing to see because during the maximum phase of the eclipse from New York, that'll be at about 3:25 in the afternoon on April the 8th, with 91%, it'll be kind of like a counterfeit twilight. The sky will turn kind of dusky, if you will. And if it's a blue sky, if we have a clear sky that day, the blue will turn a richer shade of blue. And the shadows will turn sharper because instead of dealing with one big ball of light or disk of light in the sky, we're now dealing with basically a filament of light. So it'll be interesting, certainly, if you stay here in New York. But quite frankly, if I were you and if you were in the New York metropolitan area, I'd take some time to travel north probably on I-87, probably the fastest way to get up into upstate New York and into the totality path. People have asked me, so Joe, should I travel on a vacation to go to a place where the main event is going to last for, and totality in this case will last for about 4 minutes? Should I spend all that time to see something that's only going to last 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, because you're going to see this event and you're going to remember it for the rest of your life. I promise you.
It does
I guarantee
sound breathtaking.
You.
No.
Nobody walks away from a total eclipse and says, "Well, it was nice. It was better." No, this is an event of a lifetime, and you have to go see one before you die.
You're in the zone of totality, so you can get your total solar eclipse. The closer to the center of that path of totality, you're going to maximize the time you can see totality. So I want to get into sort of this planning because, it's not too early to plan, and in some cases it could be too late with what you suggest, the heavy travel into this area. In your experience, do you have a plan B, a plan C to be on the move? Obviously, we're talking about upstate New York, so early April, we've got a problem if we got our prevailing winds off of the Great Lakes. And I worked in Syracuse. It's cloudy until we get deep into spring. So sky cover could be a serious challenge. So how do you handle that type of decision making in terms of your options?
With the knowledge of knowing of what was coming more than a year in advance, I made hotel reservations in Dallas, Texas, which is in the totality zone, in Little Rock, Arkansas, also in the totality zone. I also, believe it or not, Lee made a reservation at a hotel in Syracuse and also in Plattsburgh, New York. So basically about a week before the eclipse, with good knowledge of what the hopefully the mid and long range computer guidance is suggesting, I will choose what part of the eclipse track looks the best for weather, cancel the reservations in all of those other places, and center or plan to head for that particular part of the eclipse path that I think will have the best weather prospects. What I would suggest is perhaps not necessarily go for a hotel in the totality path, but maybe go for a hotel that's maybe a few hundred miles outside the zone of totality, and then drive in, either with your own car or rent a car, drive into totality. Of course, then you also have that situation that there may be a lot of traffic leading into the eclipse track. Those electronic signs, I remember back in 2017 warning people, solar eclipse coming, right. Expect delays on many of the roadways. So we may see that come the days leading up to April the 8th.
Okay, the actual event itself, watching it safely. If we're in a partial eclipse zone, we're going to need our solar glasses. But in the path of totality, can we look at it with the naked eye? Do you recommend that? And then adding on to that, photographing them. Well, I guess I have my answer.
These are not sunglasses. These are actual eclipse shades or eclipse glasses, which you can find online. If you go on Amazon, for example, you can probably buy a pair of these glasses. Now these are fancy. These are like sunglasses. They're in a plastic frame, but you can get a pair of eclipse glasses mounted in a cardboard frame for maybe only a couple of bucks.
Okay.
I would suggest you make sure that it also has, that is a certified eclipse glasses, that they have an ISO number on the pair of glasses, because the last time in 2017, there were some folks who were selling eclipse glasses that were not certified and were not the best for viewing. See, the thing about eclipse glasses is you want to knock out not only the visual or the bright part of the sun, but also the sun is emitting infrared and ultraviolet radiations. Mm-hmm. This is why we don't tell you to go and use regular sunglasses. You may get sunglasses that may darken the sun, but still the infrared and ultraviolet rays are coming through those glasses and burning your eyes without you immediately being aware of it. So you need to get special glasses that are made of a special type of plastic which absorb not only the visual, but also the infrared and the ultraviolet. They are made of a special plastic, either polymer or mylar. Mm-hmm. And those are the safe glasses to get. Again, you can probably find them on Amazon. There's also a company out in the western United States in California Strange name, but they had been manufacturing eclipse glasses for more than 3 decades. Rainbow Symphony. Go on rainbowsymphony.com or look up Rainbow Symphony glasses on Google. They are the best place to get special glasses. You're going to need those glasses for the partial phases.
Okay.
So if you're in New York, you're always going to need eclipse glasses to look directly at the sun. But as you just noted, Lee, once you're into totality, once the entire sun is covered by the moon for those 3 or 4 minutes that you're in totality, take those glasses off. You can look then directly at the sun, again, only during the total phase of the eclipse, and especially so if you have binoculars or a telescope to enjoy the sight of that beautiful corona or those beautiful prominences that extend outward from the dark disk of the moon. That's the only time that you can look directly at the sun, is during the total phase of the eclipse. But at all other times, even when the sun is 98 or 99% covered, that tiny little bit of sunlight that still remains is still dangerous, so you still need those glasses. But once you see that diamond ring in the sky and the sun goes into total eclipse, take those glasses off and just soak it all in, because that's going to be a beautiful, magnificent sight to see.
In terms of photographing, most people will think, is my phone going to cut it? Do I get a special filter for my camera?
You know what, Lee? I tell people who are seeing or going to their very first total eclipse, don't photograph it, please. I mean, just what you want to do at your very first eclipse is just because so many things are going to be happening. Mm-hmm. The sky colorations around the horizon, the approaching shadow, the corona, the stars appearing in the sky. You don't want to waste time fiddling with your phone. But if you need to do that, what I would do is I would get a tripod, mount your phone on the tripod, and just determine, what am I going to look at? What am I going to aim it up toward the sun? Am I going to aim it at the horizon or whatever like that? Just set it up, aim it, and just let the camera do its thing. Because as I say, I would not want to be bothered. I know, and this goes back now. We no longer have cameras that use film anymore. But I remember the story a friend of mine told me at an eclipse in the early 70s. He was trying to actually load film into his camera during totality, and he dropped the film on the floor, and he spent most of totality trying to find the film and load it in the camera. And after it was all over, said and done, he said, you know what? Here's the best way to see an eclipse. Just look at it. Just enjoy it, because it's an event that, again, you need to just soak in rather than waste your time using your camera. And of course, you just mentioned about, do you need a filter? If you have a camera and you have a telephoto lens that can, make the sun's image large enough, and you put the filter in front of the camera lens and aim it up in the general direction of the sun, then you probably will get some good views of the partial phases. Okay. But again, totality and for the actual main event, just sit or stand and watch and look.
So maybe for veterans of eclipses, something else interesting that we could do, because it might be possible that I could listen to the coverage of this eclipse on a radio station out of Cleveland, right?
Well, at night, and I'm sure everybody has encountered this in one time or another, you turn the dial on your AM radio, and sometimes you can hear Cleveland, as you mentioned, or St. Louis or Chicago, but you can't do that during the day. And the reason why you can't do that during the day is that in the ionosphere, there are several layers, so to speak, and one of the layers is filled with ionized, is an ionized area, which prevents radio waves from traveling very far during daylight. But once the sun goes down, that layer, that depletion layer in the ionosphere disappears, and now the radio signals go high up into the atmosphere, bounce off the top of the ionosphere, and get reflected hundreds or even thousands of miles. That's why you can hear radio signals from distant places at night. Well, during the time when the total eclipse is happening over big cities like Cleveland, for example, or Dallas, or near to some big cities like St. Louis, darkness is occurring in those cities, and it's almost as if it's nighttime, and then the radio signals act as if it were night, and then you're able to hear possibly the signals during the daylight hours. You can't hear, for example, Cleveland, Ohio, on your AM radio during the daytime, but maybe when the shadow is passing over Cleveland, and Cleveland has experienced a total eclipse, you turn your dial to a station, I know it's at 1100 on the AM dial, WTAM. You could hear TAM at night. You can't hear it during the day, but maybe for a few minutes during the daylight hours when Cleveland is into totality, you'll be able to hear that radio signal, only again during a total eclipse. So it's an interesting little experiment that I've suggested. It'll be in the April issue of Sky and Telescope magazine, where if it's cloudy, and we hope that that's not going to be the case, but if it is cloudy, tune your radio dial to stations that are going to be in the totality path, and maybe you'll be able to hear for a few minutes radio signals that normally cannot be heard during the daytime.
That's so neat. Back to that discussion of a sky coverage that it will be so critical. You've seen so many of these. You've seen it with broken cloud cover? Can it still be spectacular? I mean, as long as you know that you're not going to a totally overcast situation where a storm is locked in over an area. What would have sort of been the bandwidth of the sky coverages you've seen eclipses in?
It's interesting you asked that question. My very first eclipse, the one that my grandfather took me to in 1972, we had 99% overcast skies. We were so fortunate that at the time when the total eclipse occurred, this one little patch of clear weather was on the sun, and we were able to see the corona. Now, for the rest of the sky, it was amazing. You were actually able to see the clouds acted as a screen, and we were able to see the oval shape of the shadow projected on the cloud cover moving overhead. And we were also able to see different colorations. In fact, the clouds went from battleship gray just before totality to, I guess, the color of an iodine bottle. I mean, that weird kind of effect. And again, we were able to see the passage of the shadow projected on the clouds as it moved over us and then past us. So even when it is a cloud-filled sky, you are going to see a most intriguing or most interesting sight. You'll be able to see the shadow rushing in on you, over you, and then moving past you. It certainly is not anything to compare to seeing it in a clear sky, but it is certainly something that the colors and the change of the sky's brightness and darkness still is something that is going to be well worthwhile to look for.
Joe, before I let you go, I'd be remiss to not ask you. I want to just throw you a little curveball as we head maybe after halftime of winter here and get a little bit of your thoughts as we press the pause button on winter. I was hopeful that we maybe could have another little comeback in February. Little concerned based on some of the recent data I'm looking at, but I'm wondering what you might think after we get past that first week of February if winter could have a resurgence.
You know, it's very funny. The month of December, a lot of people were especially the winter weather lovers, the people who enjoy seeing snow or enjoy when the temperature falls well below freezing, saying like, "Oh dear, here we go again. It's going to be another winter, another bland winter." And meanwhile, I said that to all of these people, I said, we're not working with the same script that we had last December. And that, in fact, it was interesting that in those years where Central Park had a paucity of snow, we only had, 2.3 inches of snow last year. Right. The very next winter, we ended up with a lot of snow. Maybe not a tremendous amount of snow, but certainly a lot more than what we had the previous winter season. I said, it's going to change. I'm sure that we're going to be seeing some changes. And sure enough, in the month of January, we did see that flip to cold weather and snowy conditions. Now, of course, we're backing away from that and we're going into a milder weather pattern. But I think, Lee, that this is going to be one of those winters where we're going to be alternating. We're going to go through periods of cold and snow like we just went through. Now we're going to see a period of milder weather, and then I think we're going to go back sometime during February and on into March to another round of cold and possibly snowy conditions. And who knows, we might even see a resurgence of cold and snowy conditions into the latter part of March, or God, I hope it doesn't happen. In early April, but I think before this winter is over, even the folks who enjoy snowy and wintry conditions are going to are going to be pleased. It's not going to be like last year. I don't think we are going to have our share of cold and snow. It won't be constant, but I think we're going to kind of, it's going to be an ebb and flow pattern. We're going to go from mild to cold and mild to cold. That's my personal opinion as to what we're going to be seeing for the balance of this winter. We're already halfway through meteorological winter, and astronomical winter. The halfway point comes again right around Groundhog Day. So we'll see how the second half is as opposed to the first half.
Perfect, Joe. Thank you very much. That was great. It was really special.
Fantastic. And again, let me know when this is available, and I'll be sure to put it on all my social media platforms, and we'll hopefully get a big audience for this.
Sounds good. Thanks again, Joe. Be well. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion about the total solar eclipse in early April as much as I did. We're going to, of course, be vigilant about looking at that weather pattern as we get closer to the date. Obviously, we'll start to get a feel for what part of the nation is likely to have fair weather versus unsettled weather. It'll be tough to know details until we're a few days out, but hopefully we can help your planning in that respect, because obviously you want to plan ahead as best you can. So we'll be watching that in the AccuWeather forecast. But that'll do it for this edition of Whether or Not. We'll see you next time, rain or shine.